right, you can begin.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the December 15th, 2021 meeting of the CB6 Executive Committee. My name is Kyle Athiad, and I am the chair of CB6. This meeting is being called to order at 6:34 p.m. And tonight we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. Tonight's minutes will be taken by CB6 Secretary Matt Bondi, and we will now take attendance by roll call. Jesus will conduct the roll call, and please answer present when your name is called.
All right. Kyle Athiad.
Present.
Thank you. Elvie Barroso.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Bondi. Matt Bondi. Claire Brennan, I don't think can join us tonight.
No, she's excused.
Is Anton here in her stead?
No.
Okay. Rick Eggers cannot join us tonight, I believe. Reshma is going to be joining us a little later, I think.
I'm here.
Oh, all right.
Come on. Okay, thank you.
John Keller.
Present.
Thank you. Sandy McKee. Sandy McKee. Rich Mintz.
Present.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Roberts.
Present.
Thank you. Jean Santoro.
Here.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod. Sandro Sherrod. Mark Thompson is unable to join us tonight. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Thank you. Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
Thank you. All right, we do have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Jesus. So the agenda for tonight's meeting appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. So members of the executive committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the November 17th meeting were distributed to executive committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes. So committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom. All right, seeing no objections, the minutes from the November 17th meeting are adopted. So in order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, let's observe a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. Next, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information such as an email address or link that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Next, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will first identify you and you can then unmute yourself so that you can speak. And last but not least, we are required by New York State law to have a transcript of this meeting. So please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. I will now deliver my chair's report. So I don't have any major updates. Most of them I shared at our full board meeting the other week, but I do want to discuss at this point what we had discussed at our last executive committee meeting, which is the meeting summary. So Jesus, could you pull that up for me? All right, so as I promised, I put together a template to share with the executive committee before implementing anything. So this is what we discussed last time, that we still wanted to have some paper record, some sort of summary of what was discussed so that someone could easily refer to the appropriate meeting to further explore in detail what was discussed, how votes were made, things of that nature. So as you can see here, there are actually some very similar data points that we're including in this that you might see in some sort of standardized minutes, including, title of the meeting, date, time, location, but also who's chairing the meeting and who's writing the summary, as well as attendance. But the real big difference in the summary, as you can see, is that it's much briefer. There's no need to include who made motions and who objected and things of that nature. We just want a quick review of what was discussed. It could be one line, it could be a couple of sentences, depending on the author's style. But we just want to make sure that this is properly used, that someone could use this in conjunction with the recordings of our full committee meetings and full board meetings to then refer and go to the point that they could then watch it in its totality. So just from looking at this draft, does anyone have any initial thoughts or comments, suggestions, feedback? And I see Matt joined as well. Matt, this is the template for the meeting summaries. I know that you have some thoughts on minutes. So this is what we're just reviewing right now.
Great, thanks. I'm not going to be able to look at it now. I'm on the street walking. We had a power outage on the 6 train. It jammed me up on my way home, but I'm listening in as I walk.
Okay, no problem. And I'll be sending this by email after this.
Can you enlarge the screen?
Jesus, could you zoom in? Maybe. Is that better, Cole?
Thank you.
So this is a template for people to use. So that's why you see the terms insert, so that people could easily input the appropriate information. And I guess I can just go through it quickly, Jesus. So if you could just scroll a little bit down. So at the top, we have insert meeting title, insert date, insert time, insert location. Beneath that line is then meeting chaired by, so insert the committee chair. The meeting summary is written by, insert the name of the board member writing the summary. Insert committee members present, insert guest speakers present, and insert members of the public present. And in the summary, we have insert when the meeting starts and when the meeting ends, of course. But basically, we want to include the agenda items, who presented that agenda item, if it's not the chair themselves. And then just several sentences summarizing the main points of the agenda item and associated discussion. And then any resolutions introduced and the vote count. So the idea is that there's no need to include who seconded, who motioned, who did this, who did that. It's just we want to have the bare structure, the bare information of what occurred during that. So if someone looked at this, they could say, oh, I wonder what took place during that discussion on the template for the meeting summary on December 15, 2021, when they might be a year, 2, 3, 5 years ahead and look back at this. Any strong feelings on this? Any feedback, any things that are immediately jumping to mind? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So what I would like to do is I would like to try this meeting summary for our January meetings. And at our February executive committee meeting, we can then review this and see how that worked for people. Yeah, Richard?
Sorry, I tried to raise my hand. I didn't get it in fast enough. I just wanted to say that I think this is good.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I think, we haven't put it in practice yet. So I think if we use it for January meetings and when we convene in February for our executive committee meeting, we can discuss how this went or if it was confusing or any other changes that we might need to make. So if there are no further comments on this, we can conclude this, but we should be using this going forward. And I will send, first, I will send this to all of the executive committee members in case there's feedback that pops up after this meeting. And, I'll give about a week for that. And if nothing is proposed or suggested, I can then send it to the full board, informing them of the changes with the open meetings law and this associated meeting summary template that we'll be using going forward. Kevin, I saw your hand up.
It was for a second, but I think we're good. When the agenda items I put together, I usually don't put public comment on the agenda, and I just think that it usually, at least in our committee meetings, there are public comments. Do we just have that as a separate section, because I know I'm going to probably be filling it out. And should I just treat that as an agenda item?
You mean like new business?
Well, usually we give opportunities sometimes up front for people to speak that have been clamoring to speak on a certain topic that may not be on the agenda. That's all.
Oh, okay, yeah, so you can include that as part of like well, you should be running it as part of like a new business.
It should be, you're right.
Yeah, so just have that be sort of under the new business agenda item.
That'll work. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, remember, this is very simple. I know a lot of people overthink minutes, and particularly because minutes have a reputation of being very, very detailed, as you know they should be. But because we're now allowed to use the recordings and transcripts in lieu of very detailed minutes, to have something that someone could just kind of refer to like a cover sheet, I think will be helpful. So, and I'll of course discuss this in the letter to the rest of the board. But any other final comments before we move on from this?
Kyle,
Yep.
one thing I would like to mention, when I was looking over this after Kyle let me have a sneak preview of it, one of the things that I noticed is the section where it says several sentences summarizing the main points of the particular agenda item. I was wondering, if in fact, if it's just a few sentences, some committees might want to try perhaps taking a minute or two to kind of hash out what those several sentences might be, sort of why it's still fresh, and effectively sort of like write that section, that little section of this template as the meeting goes. I think for more experienced members, this might not be as necessary, but for some of the newer members who maybe don't understand what a lot of the backstory is with a lot of the agenda items sometimes, it might help for everyone to sort of have an understanding. I'm not sure if that would work or not, but just thought I'd throw that out there as a possible thing to see if it sticks.
No, that's a good point, Jesus. So one of the things that we were discussing is at the end of each agenda item, maybe having the summary writer just confirm with the rest of the committee that what they have notated is accurate and reliable reflection of the discussion just had. So that could be something you want to implement. If it's not necessary, I'll leave that up to the committee chair. Richard, you had your hand up?
I was just gonna suggest just what you said, so never mind.
Perfect, yeah. So I know some of you, everyone runs their committees in a different way, have a different leadership style, but I think maybe at least for January, that might be something you want to try out, which is to, at the end of the agenda item, just have if you want to take it on as chair of the committee, or if you'd rather let the, let's call him the summarizer. If the summarizer wants to just quickly confirm with the chair before moving on to the next agenda item that what they have notated is properly reflective of the conversation had, that's something I would suggest, at least in this trial run. Okay, so let's commit to using this for our January meetings. As normal, please submit those to the board office as you do with any other documentation you would in advance of the full board meeting, the following full board meeting, so that they can have it ready to put up. And Jesus, do you have any other things to add to that in terms of submissions?
Nope, just submit it like you would the minutes and make sure the committee chair has, okayed it.
Okay. So that will conclude my chair's report, and we will now hear from Jesus Perez, CB6 District Manager.
All right, Kyle, I'm sorry, remind me, I'm sorry if I missed this template that we just showed. Are you sending it to folks? Am I sending it to folks? How are we doing that?
So I'll send it to this executive committee first, and I'll give everybody about a week. Since I know most of the beginning January meetings are being rescheduled as we'll hear. And if not, then I will just send it out next week to everybody.
Great.
And so whoever already signed up to be the minutes taker for January, this is what they'll use. So just make sure as committee chairs that you're following up with them as well. And actually just one side note before I conclude the report is if all of you could send an email to your committees, just so that they have your emails, because I've been reached out to by a lot of different members who don't have committee chairs' emails. Please do so that they can easily contact you with ideas or prospective ideas for agenda items going forward.
One thing I would suggest with that, the city has some weird rules about like how to email groups of people and stuff like that. What we can do, what the office can do is the office can send in the next email they send to the committee, they can send, they can CC the committee chair, and that way everybody will have that. Because committee, when you email the entire committee, everyone has to be BCC'd, but the chair can be, it's weird.
Okay.
But we can do that to make sure that everyone has the emails that they need to have.
Perfect. Thank you. And now we'll hear from you.
Okay. All right, my report is super short. I just wanted to remind all the committee chairs that the 2022 dates are out. We've sent them all to you by email. If you haven't seen that email, look in your inbox, and that they're on the website. Just go to the CB6 website, click calendar. You'll find the next 6 months there for 2022. And if you actually subscribe for the calendar, you'll find the whole year of 2022 and beyond. We've been getting some questions from board members about 2022 dates, and I just wanted to let everybody know they're up there. That's it.
All right, thank you, Jesus. Are there any questions for Jesus? All right, seeing none, let's move on to committee meetings for January, and we'll begin with transportation.
That would be me. Hello, everybody. It's been a little while since I've seen you, but I'm back, at least for now. Unfortunately for me and for you, I have a couple of heavier items that I want to drop on you because they're coming up, and they're coming at us fast. So you should know about them. The first is the ever popular NYU Langone. Starting sometime in the next month or so, they will be moving the bus stop that's approximately at 32nd Street and First Avenue up about half a block from where it is, because they will begin a 2.5-year long construction project on the front half of that building to redo it. Their certificate of occupancy dates back to 1957. The hospital rooms no longer conform to federal regulations. So they're ripping the place up, and they will be starting to do that then. We're not looking at this on the next agenda because there's absolutely nothing to be done about it right now. We have another meeting scheduled, I believe, with NYU Langone. What we did do in the meeting we had, which Kyle was also at, was encourage them, since they have a vast communications department, to reach out to everybody in the district. Their initial reaction was, well, we're talking to the community board and you guys. And I said, no, we need to address community organizations. We need to address tenant organizations. We need to address the bus riders of New York, all those people, because we have people not just in CB6, but CB8, CB3. I suggested they also stop by those places, because there are thousands of people between the essential workers and patients who get off there every day and expect the bus stop to be more or less where it is, and they're going to be walking into something quite different. So we were supposed to hear back from them about a week or so ago about how their progress on that. We haven't, surprise. So we're going to have to poke them. Bad time to do that, the holidays, but we'll try. The upside is that Ellen Gustafson, who used to be in Dan Garodik's office, who's worked very closely with CB6 over years, is on their pilot group, whatever you want to call it, as an advisory capacity. So she jumped all over that suggestion, and hopefully she will be able to make it go through. But that's heads up number one. Heads up number two, the FDR Drive bridge, as they like to call it. I never thought of it that way before. Between 42nd Street and 49th Street is about to go under reconstruction. Yay. We don't have enough construction in this district. We obviously need more. So I'm not exactly clear when that's going to start. I'm not exactly clear how long it's going to last, because the 2-hour meeting I have with about 120 people from state DOT and city DOT is tomorrow morning. So I'll find out more about that then, and we'll relay it back to you folks and to the committee and the board. But it is on the horizon, and it is going to make a mess. just in case we didn't have enough of a mess on the east side with Escree and everything else we've got going on. Open restaurants. I was at a not a DOT. I was at a session at the BP's office last week. I believe Kyle was also there. And we heard a report and some lengthy question and answer sessions about DOT's takeover of the open restaurants program and what that bodes for the future. The answer is still unclear because this is a process that's going to take about 1.5 to 2 years. What is clear is that they are trying desperately to engage all the relevant agencies. They do have goals. They're hoping that, in fact, this next step helps to shrink the number of open restaurants on the street, besides cleaning up their acts, making their places better, all that sort of stuff. Because among other things, they will start charging for the public space. That'll be one of the implementations that they're looking at, which is, I think, a very good idea because it is public space. And it's one thing to patch this stuff together during an emergency, and another thing to make it free going forward in perpetuity. So there are a lot of balls in the air, as you can imagine, several hundred at least. Some of the questions were very precise and very smart. DOT people did seem to take them in. Ed Pinkar was on the call, along with a whole raft of other folks, some people from other agencies. But there are going to be sticking points all along the way, and so we're going to have to keep an eye on that as well, because it's a big transition from 4,000 or less cafes that were basically huddled in 2 parts of Manhattan and ruled by DCP to somewhere, whatever it turns out to be. At the moment, it's about 12,000. If it turns out to be even half that, it's still a big jump across 5 boroughs that are governed by DOT and the associated agencies. They're still hiring enforcement personnel. That worries me less than it does some other people, simply because this is about 1.5 to 2 years off. So as they build that section, that's okay. It's going to be more important to keep our eyes on what the rules and suggested changes are, and how the different agencies plan to interact about those things. So there's that. Colleen Shattergun of DOT has followed up about some of the open restaurants complaint that exist in our district. There were 3 outstanding, or 4. And she sent inspectors to all of them. We have a report from her about that. Brendan can distribute it to various people who need to get it, especially Claire at whatever we're calling that Bachl committee. So, we have some answers on that. 3rd Avenue, we need to poke DOT and find out what's going on. The last time I talked to Ed Pinkar, he told me that they had decided they wanted to extend our plan up to 34th Street. That's going to put a time crimp in it, simply because there's massive construction going on between 33rd and 35th Street. So that's pushing it back to sometime in 2022, probably later. On the other hand, the support within DOT for this thing still seems to be constant. I'm going to actually ask a couple of people to check out inside DOT and see if they can find out more about what's going on in there about it for us, so we have a little more detailed sense of where they're at. That Grand Central Terminal, more pedestrian friendly thing that you see popping up as agenda item 2, is under continued discussion. We are going to discuss it for probably another month or 2. Again, no big rush on that. I just want to get the groundwork laid, and I want to get it set up, because coming late spring, thanks to a friendly nudge from Mark Thompson, I've connected with the folks at the Wagner Institute at NYU, and we'll submit this plan and some details. And they will give this to, if it's chosen, they will give it to a graduate student team of urban planners, who will do for this essentially what Sam Schwartz did for the 3rd Avenue thing, which is flesh us out a more detailed planning system, so that, again, we can go to DOT with something and say, look, here's your basic plan. This is what we'd like. Now go and do your thing and drop it on top of it, move pieces around, whatever it is. But you've got a place to start now, so you don't have to start from ground zero. So that's something else on the agenda. And lastly, I have a question for Kevin. We talked about the post-Ida rainfall and remediation around that stuff. And I know we'd agreed to each appoint somebody from our committee to start doing research on that. I asked Ed Seligman, who was very enthusiastic. So I was just wondering, and since Parks would be the lead committee on this, not Transpo, we're involved simply because so much DOT turf would be involved.
Well, I didn't want to Bigfoot you there. If you wanted to take the lead, I'm fine with that.
No.
I did get Ann's recommendation about her possibly being, a Parks representative. Maura Wong was teed up to be the representative just because of her schedule. She cannot take that role. So that's why, if you want to consider Ann sort of an ad hoc,
I'd rather not. I'd rather have somebody.
Maura. Okay.
I'd rather have somebody from your committee actually do it, because Ann's suggestion also involves taking Ronnie to do it, and I really don't need to lose 2 members of my committee to this, first of all. And secondly, since Parks is the lead committee, I think you should actually have somebody who's there, not an honorary member.
I understood. I didn't know that we were considered the lead.
I appreciate not being Bigfooted too, because I'm a little fragile at the moment.
All right. So I'm going to find someone besides Mara to do that. And I think it's safe to say that will happen this month. Does that still work with your, well, we're taking the lead. So I guess we'll
taking the
decide
lead. It's got to mostly work with you. We're flying support on this and happy to do it.
Okay.
And Ann is very keyed up, and Ronnie will be flying support with her. I mean, that's already happening. So that's not a problem. I just don't want to, since it is Parks and Parks in the lead, I think Parks should actually have somebody who's not honorary, but an actual living person who's on the Parks committee doing this for their thing. So that was that. And that's essentially it. So
I see a hand from Rich. Rich,
yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I'm on the citywide volunteer coordinating committee for open streets. And today I saw Kyle Gorman from DOT present on the upcoming open streets program for next year. Has that hit you folks yet? Or did I see something you haven't seen?
No, well, I've seen it. I'm not sure about the rest of the committee because I haven't seen the presentation yet.
Okay. I mean, if you want, I can try to get a copy of the presentation.
That would be great. I assumed it was available on the DOT website because they've been flashing it around to various places. But if you can get it and send it to me, that would be great.
I will. It's very good, and it seems very coherent, and the people running it are super energetic. So that's all I'll say.
And they actually have money for things like enlivening the space, which is a key difference from where they were before. And same thing, they're also trying to rationalize rules again. For everybody that complains about this, I understand. But at the same time, this was an emergency situation where literally things were being thrown at the wall to try to stop. Or if you want, the little Dutch boy was sticking his fingers in the dike all over the place, trying to prevent too much leakage from going through. So, so that's trying to be rationalized now. It's New York City. So, but there you have it. Any other questions?
The only question I have is, on your agenda, you had mentioned for the item number 1, 49th Street. But I think Brendan mentioned to me that when the conversation was had at the committee a month or 2 ago, there was talk of 50th Street. Which one should we go with?
Right now, you should leave it as East 49th or East 50th, as it, and you don't have to put East 50th in brackets, because what we will do is just clarify that with Colleen, and Ann Seligman has kind of appointed herself as keeper of the official rules of how DOT names bus stops. So we'll clear it with Ann, and we'll clear it with Colleen, and find out which one is most appropriate. Personally, I don't care as long as it's not Mitchell Place, which very few people know where it is.
Okay.
That was the main point. So let's just leave it that way, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't see any further questions for you, Gene.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you. All right. So let's move on to Environment and Parks. Kevin?
Yes. Thank you, Kyle. To recap our previous meeting, we did continue an initiative that has at least one community organization at each meeting present their desired improvements to the community. We continued with the Stuyvesant Park Neighborhood Association. Separately, we asked the Parks Department about the then ongoing 2-month trial to make the St. Martin Park Garden public use green space. The trial was ending the next day. As we reported in the full board meeting, the next day we were informed by the Parks Department that after a 2-month rest and prep period, The garden will open permanently to the public starting in the spring. Now, on the upcoming agenda, the committee vice chair, Jeannie D'Onofrio, and I agreed to not hold a scheduled meeting for the first time since we started serving in our committee posts. Jean, this will not delay my finding a deputy on the floodwater initiative, I promise. Unless there's a disagreement here, there will not be a meeting on January 4th, putting our next meeting at February 1st. On request for partnerships, the National Arts Club has asked the committee to hold meetings there if and when we restart in-person meetings. Now, this first came up a few months ago, and Jeannie checked with the Conflicts of Interest Board to see if there would be any issue with any CB6 meetings there. The Conflict of Interest Board said that committee meetings at the club would be just fine. We decided not to take a next step because the club's bathrooms are not ADA compliant due to the building's age. And this was not for CB6's sake, but the club was already planning to upgrade to ADA compliance. The club's bathrooms are open to the public. I don't know if everybody knows this, 24 hours a day. They have it available to thousands of New Yorkers each year who visit the club. The club's executive director recently asked the committee and or another CB6 body to provide a letter of support for the club's application for funding for new bathrooms from the New York State Council on the Arts. Total project cost about $600,000, and the club is asking the Council on the Arts for half that amount. The club noted that Councilmember Rivera and others are already sharing their support with letters. Now, unfortunately, this request came in a day after this month's committee meeting. The application deadline is January 3rd. And I'd like to discuss this now or after the conclusion of my report on whether we want to try to do something in the short term to support that. On committee vision, I'll jump on to the end of the report and then we can pick up on that if we need to. On committee vision, more open and safe public space in the district remains priority. It's nice to see at the reopening event at Clara Coffey Park yesterday, EDC giving more open space now that phase 1 of the Greenway flyover there has ended. On open space, I feel, and this was brought up in the committee meeting this month, I feel it would be malpractice not to follow up in some form with Gramercy Park to retrace this for us and for those that weren't at the last exec. Through the work of the committee, we have a copy of the original 5-page 1831 Gramercy Park deed. Members of the community have questions about the deed for the Gramercy Park trustees, including why past and or present trustees changed some of the properties whose owners can gain access to the park. The deed does show cartography, a map that shows 66 lots, including 6 lots that are now owned by the city, that being Irving Place and Lexington Avenue, which weren't there when the deed was written. So we have questions and the community has questions. We have reached out to the trustee, who's the president of the Gramercy Park Block Association, who has been at previous CB6 meetings on other matters. Since November 18th, we have reached out to her on multiple days and we copied additional board members on that correspondence, meaning board members of the Gramercy Block Association. 2 things we informed these representatives. The invitation to the meeting said that the committee has reviewed its copy of the deed and has some questions, and also about remarks by the mayor about the property tax status of Gramercy Park key holders. As of this evening, we've received no response. This is really important to me. I repeated more than once at our committee meeting. We represent, of course, the voices of everyone in the community. This includes both those who are Gramercy Park key holders, who believe the park should remain the same in its status, and those who do not. But we want to give the Gramercy Park trustees the opportunity to explain the deed and the tax status. In 2018, the mayor said he would reassess a 2010 court decision that Gramercy Park claims gives it special tax-free status to private open green space. As I was updated, the district office did reach out to the mayor's office. There is no plan to do a reassessment in this last couple of weeks. The Department of Finance also could not confirm that it's reassessing the value of Gramercy Park key holders' property taxes. I think it's important also to note that the answers from the trustees may actually be satisfying to the committee, and that may end the discussion right there, but we don't know if we don't hear from them. Because we haven't heard from them, I proposed an option to discuss of spending some dollars to hire a land use attorney to look at the deed. On the tax status, we could follow up with the incoming administration. I know this is a sensitive matter, and I'm here for any questions.
All right, Kevin, we have a couple of hands up. Let's start with Rich.
Hi, I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly that you said the National Arts Club restrooms are open 24/7 to the public.
That's what the letter said from the executive director. It was a bit surprising to me too. I do know they have public events there, but he has stated in his letter as part of the application that they are open 24 hours to the public. Now, I have not followed up on that point, because what it could mean is that they do have events there, public events that people can come in.
Right.
Possibly that means that 24/7, meaning whenever they have an event, people can access. So, but I took that wording directly from the application.
Okay. So I won't repeat it until we know what it means.
Yeah. So sorry about, and I should have parsed it by saying that might not mean fully access. But
Yeah,
you did want to point out that.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I don't think that's necessarily true, that it's open to the public 24/7. I guess unless you're wearing shirt and tie and whatever else you need to get to the National Arts Club.
I think there's another entrance. There's a couple entrances for their public events. So I'll get some clarity on that.
All right, next hand up we have is Gene. Gene,
Yes.
go ahead. You're on mute. There
Yeah, no, I know. Thanks. Took me a second to get the cursor over there for whatever reason. Yeah, Kevin, as always, I admire your tenacity and perseverance, especially about the Gramercy Park thing. But I did have a question, because this is a sensitive matter and certainly a very sensitive group of people, as you know. So what I was wondering is to what extent have you interfaced with our elected officials about any of this?
I actually spoke with Councilmember Rivera at the National Arts Club.
Mhm.
We didn't go into it in depth at all, so I don't want to, again, mischaracterize that conversation. It's safe to say that a deeper conversation possibly should take place.
I would encourage you to have that deeper conversation, just because Arlene Harrison is Arlene Harrison, and she's a formidable person. I don't think that's libelous to say that. The elected officials are in let's say, a more advantageous position to speak directly to her and the board about some of these issues than we are, especially, if we're positioning ourselves as shock troops in something like this. So I would encourage you at least to please have those conversations with the appropriate elected officials and get some depth to try to get a sense of what it is that you're walking into, just a little recon before you advance into no man's land.
Oh, I was on mute, sorry. Great insight as always, Gene, so I appreciate that. And I will take also Kyle's lead on what that next step should be. Should that be a reach out if indeed we go that direction from Kyle, from the district office, or from the committee?
Thanks, Kevin.
So Kevin, we'll discuss how to best reach out to the elected officials, because I agree with Gene on making sure we do our due diligence before taking any further. But we'll figure that out, if that should come from me or from you.
And just so you know, we wouldn't raise this unless we felt at least some level of due diligence has been done. We've had some legal minds look at it. We not a land use attorney, although that's why we're requesting that. We've had this deed for over a year. So we don't take this lightly. We want to make sure that our research is deep, and it includes a lot of going back to 1800s newspaper files and a lot of things. So there's probably been easily over 50 hours of research that we've already started. That's just to say we wouldn't take this on unless we felt there were more questions raised after that research.
Kevin, I was definitely not questioning either your due diligence or your commitment. The reason I'm suggesting this is simply because it is a explosively loaded topic, and I think we need people farther up the food chain to do the interface and interpretation. Again, we're not professionals. They are, and they have access to professionals on their staffs or otherwise. that could certainly help out with this. And as well as giving you the political background that you would need to know before you go there. Again, always good idea to recon no man's land before you just send the squad in there. Hopefully you'll get all of them back if you do that, as opposed to what can happen otherwise. So that was it. I mean, again, I admire your tenacity and perseverance about this. And I personally would like nothing more than to have Gramercy Park open to the public. But
yeah, and again, we don't want it open if that's not what is legally there. I will say that I'm personal friends with one member of the board of the Gramercy Park Block Association. So this is not about, some, personal desire to get in there. It's just doing what's right based on what's legal and what's not. And it's really because of the outcry. Same thing happened with St. Martin Park. It was an outcry from the community to ask questions. So I feel that we're a representative, obviously, of the community, and that's why we're in there.
Agreed, but the legal and historical status of Gramercy Park is quite different from the St. Martin situation. And that's one reason.
It's got a lot more, yes. It's more of a minefield. Is that safe to say?
I think so, hence all my recon metaphors. Yes, exactly.
Exactly. How about the National Arts Club request for a letter of support?
Before we jump that, we do have one more hand. So I just want to make sure that yeah. So John, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question, but only because it came up again last night, and just informational, Kevin. There has been construction on First Avenue near 57th with jackhammering beginning at 11 o'clock at night. And I walked over there one night in the rain and talked to the guy who was running it, who claimed it was a Con Ed project subcontracted to a private contractor. Where do we go? I called 311 and was told that I would hear back in 7 to 10 days, but people didn't sleep last night. Where's the right place to take?
Well, the Parks Department is very aware of it. Again, at the Clara Coffee Park reopening, this was a discussion after the ribbon cutting. It was Sheena Kaufman, the Parks District Manager. It was the Sutton Place Conservancy. We discussed it with Pat Taylor, who of course is the president of that organization. Parks is trying to do something, but because of that construction, Parks feels it doesn't have the control to just take down the fencing and to stop them from jackhammering. Parks said that they would follow up on it as of yesterday. So I'm waiting to hear back if there is any movement. It is definitely an issue.
Yeah, thank you. I let it go. I only brought it up tonight because they started up again last night, and
And John, just as a reminder for things like that, you don't have to wait to bring it to executive committee. You can send it as a service request to the board, and we can just kind of do that directly from our vantage point.
Yeah, this was just a coincidence, but thank you very much, Kevin.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. And the people that were in charge, Matt, who has his hand raised, probably knows more about this, even though it's on First Avenue. And I know Matt is very involved with the Sutton Place Parks Conservancy. They do feel that that's sort of in their scope as well, and Parks does as well because of people using the parks a block away. Matt, did you have a question? No.
No, thanks, Kevin. I just wanted to, tell everybody for the purpose of transparency that I'm a board member of the Sutton area, the Sutton Parks Conservancy.
Yeah. And I know there's some issues with the Sutton Place as well, with some fencing and all sorts. We had a long discussion about that whole neighborhood yesterday.
Okay. So Kevin, let's talk about the National Arts Club. So just to recap for everybody, the National Arts Club has sent a request to us to support their application in receiving a grant. So this would be a letter of recommendation. This is not, us dispersing funds or anything like that. They sent us a template. But what I told Kevin was this honestly should have been an agenda item at a meeting, but obviously National Arts Club missed their last meeting, and even if the Environment and Parks was meeting next time, it would still be too late. So I told them to bring it to executive committee because we can take a vote on this together if we would like to send a letter of support. Or if we do not feel comfortable doing that, we can also agree to just not to have no comment on this. But I think it's worth our discussion at the executive committee meeting to support obviously a local organization that needs help to make their facilities more accessible to people. So I don't know if anyone has a thought on that, or Kevin, if you wanted to introduce a motion to support this, but Jean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I've been to I don't know how many events and presentations at the National Arts Club. They're an admirable organization doing a lot of outreach to the community, doing a lot of different things there. So I would be personally happy to support their efforts to modernize their bathrooms. It just seems sort of brainless, but there you go. Thanks.
Is that a motion? That sounds like a motion.
It can be a motion, absolutely.
Okay, so there is a motion by Jean to write a letter of support for the National Art Club for funding to make their bathrooms ADA accessible.
I'd be happy to second that.
All right, that is seconded by Kevin. Jesus, do you want to do a roll call for this?
Sure thing.
Oh, Claude, do you have a question? Sorry, you're on mute.
It just popped up because I've been there many times also. And making it ADA accessible, is that including the elevators that go from the landing down to where the bathrooms are? Because they do have elevators, but they don't all work.
I know that's in their scope, but this would be the entrance from the street that would allow where people go for public events. It would not be for their main entrance. You know, I could pull up the.
So I can, yeah, I have it pulled up, Kevin. I can read what they talked about. So this is the bathrooms in itself. So it's not anything else with the structure. So they said this is regarding the much needed renovations to bring the outdated bathrooms up to current code, compliant with ADA guidelines with more space, new systems and modern functional amenities, while also installing an adjacent, fully accessible, gender neutral restroom.
Okay. Thank you.
And it concludes actually, and I do think we need clarification on this. It says used by visitors who come to the frequent and popular National Arts Club programs. The facilities are and will continue to be available daily to the general public as one of the only publicly accessible bathrooms in the Gramercy Park area.
And I think there's a reference to some 30,000 members of the public that use it.
So we'll get clarification on that. That's not something we need to include. That's just a template they sent us. But this is about a general letter of support. So does that clarify for you, Claude?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Perfect.
I should raise my hand.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm trying to go by the rules. Where should this come from? Should it come from? And of course, he reached out to the committee because, of course, its scope is arts, cultural affairs, and landmarks. But should this come from executive committee?
So yeah, so it would be signed by me, and we can have you as a co-signer on that as well, saying that this was discussed at executive committee and that we voted however you voted. In support of this or not in support of this. So if it's not in support, then we won't send a letter, but if it's in support, we will say the executive committee because technically it did not pass full board. So we'll just speak as the executive committee.
Right, but we do need to vote, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so Jesus, please.
Right. Codified.
In favor?
Thank you. Elvie Barroso. Elvie Barroso.
Yes, I support.
Thank you. Matt Bondi.
In favor.
Thank you. Claire Brennan is not here. Reshma Patel voting in place of Rick Eggers.
In favor.
Thank you. John Keller.
In favor.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
In favor.
Thank you. Matt Roberts.
In favor.
Thank you. Jean Santoro.
In favor.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod is not here. Mark Thompson is not here. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
In favor.
Thank you. Rich Mintz.
In favor.
Thank you. Sandra McKee.
In favor. And if I could
you.
just ask, will this then become a resolution that goes in front of full board?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Sandy? You were kind of muffled with your audio.
Sorry, will this now be considered a resolution at the committee and go before full board? That's the way we did the previous letter that came through land use. Was that clear?
I'm sorry,
I'm
I'm
in
not
favor.
able to hear. Are you asking if
She's-
this will
she's-
go before full board?
She's asking, land use recently did a letter much in the same way, where they, because of time constraints, they passed a letter by the committee, but then that letter became a resolution so that it could actually go before full board, even though the deadline had passed.
Oh, yeah,
Technically, the more correct way to do it.
yeah, so we can do that.
Thank you. I'm in favor.
All right, Claude L. Winfield.
In favor.
All right, so that is a unanimous 12 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, no non-entitles.
Okay, and I'll draft the letter and I'll send it to you and Kevin Jesus.
Great.
Mhm.
And who will modify that to be a reso?
Kevin, can you do that?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Do you want me to, well, you already have the sort of the template. Do you need me to tweak that to
So
reflect?
I'll write the letter. If you could just put it in reso form.
Mhm.
And I guess at our January full board, we'll have to have it as like an exec resolution rather than an environment and parks resolution.
Mhm. I'll get a clarity, Rich, on everybody on the, obviously to underscore on the 24/7 access.
Okay. I think we're all set with environment parks, so we'll now move on to budget and government affairs. Reshma?
Thank you, Kyle. So we did not have a meeting in December. And in January, with a quieter time on the budget side, we are going to turn our focus back to governmental affairs part of our committee. And we're going to have discussion of a bill that's in the New York State Senate and State Assembly. It's Bill S-808 in the State Senate and A-2244 in the State Assembly. And it's legislation to provide minimum wage for people who are in the service industry that are tip workers. The state's minimum wage bill has excluded them, especially in particular, approximately 200,000 restaurant workers in New York City who have suffered considerably during this pandemic and who have been leaving in large numbers. And in addition to that, people with disabilities are still not by law required to be paid minimum wage. And so we're going to ask, Senator Hoylman is one of the co-sponsors of the bill in the Senate. So we're going to have someone come speak from his office about that. And we're going to have someone come speak. We're trying to find someone from the State Assembly side and also from an advocacy group talking about why that we should or shouldn't support this bill. And then if we decide to support, we hope to put together a resolution.
Thank you. And can you actually invite Claire to this as well as Business Affairs Chair? Because I think this could be a joint resolution as well. Or if you guys decide amongst yourselves to just keep it separate, that's all fine. But definitely want to include her on that because I think it's stronger if it comes as a joint.
No, I will speak to her. And we actually trying to also get somebody. There are many restaurants in New York City who have signed on to this one fair wage bill, who are paying people $15 minimum wage and have shown a model that works. Because obviously the problem with the minimum wage from a lot of small businesses perspective is that it makes it cumbersome for them. And to have a discussion kind of talking about how we can do this so that we're not burdening, small businesses in our district as well. So that would be good. I'll reach out to her.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then in terms of, I'm new at this right now, but the community vision, as I think Rick has mentioned before, we're trying to focus more on things like this, bill that's in the State Senate and Assembly right now on the governmental affairs side, in addition to budget. When we went from ad hoc to monthly meetings, we did it so we could discuss more things like this.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much, Reshma. Are there any questions for Reshma on the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee?
Reshma, just one question. These speakers that you're hoping to convene for this, you guys are going to reach out to them, right?
Yeah, so I'm asking Brendan to reach out to the elected. So
Okay.
he's in for the state senator Hoylman's office, but then for the advocacy group One Fair Wage, as well as the restaurant owner, I've already reached out to them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Welcome, thank you.
All right, so hearing nothing else, we'll move on to the next committee meeting, which is Health and Human Services. Elvie?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. So we had, in our previous meeting, we had 3 topics that were heavy load. We had the racism on public health crisis, single payer health insurance system for New York State residents, and we had the chief of staff from Senator Kruger's office that presented about the Delta 8 THC. So for our upcoming agenda, we will continue to discuss the single payer health insurance system. And also we have a new topic. It's about retired municipal employee being moved to Medicare Advantage Plus plan. And I'm not aware of this topic, so I would like to help. I would like the help of the office to get us a speaker for this topic. And our committee vision for 2022, we are going to focus on the social services available for seniors. And we plan to develop a survey on nursing home care. And also we would like to explore the plan to set up community health services. I think that's it.
So thank you, Elvie. And for the speaker for your second agenda item, you're exploring that? Or do you need help from anyone else?
No, I need help from the office.
Well, we were going to ask for some guidance on that,
Yeah.
because this seems to be, from what I've read about it, is a sort of benefits matter for municipal retirees. And there are court cases, some of which are unfolding like now. Fun fact, the judge who's hearing these cases is a former chair of this board. But it seems like where it stands now, the implementation of this is going to be delayed until April, and additional time has been mandated by the court to allow folks to opt out. But there's still an element of the case that there's still some retirees that would like to scrap this plan altogether. And that element is still sort of not decided. So, like, what are the contours of this discussion? Is it going to be a pro-con type of thing? Is it going to be an informational presentation? It does seem like maybe the easiest way to go is for the member who suggested this topic, who is impacted by it, to maybe do an informational presentation, very similar, Elvie, to the one that you did about the THC food products. But this is going to be more like a debate, and given the sort of low attendance numbers we tend to see at the committee, I wonder about how that's going to work.
Yeah, so I will probably communicate with Sandra, because she was the one that suggested this topic. And we can probably start with informational session on this.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Elvie, feel free to ask her if she knows somebody who could speak on it, because clearly she has an interest. If she has a speaker that we can invite,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be all on you.
Yeah, I will ask.
Yeah. Claude, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Jesus is correct. The judge that made the decision, matter of fact, I think today or yesterday, is Lyle Frank. It's covering this whole issue. But if you want to reach out and get information, anybody from any of the unions that to help negotiate this have individuals that have welfare funds within those unions. And all you have to do is ask the person from the welfare fund to come, and they can present the whole topic to you. So for like CSA, it's Doug Hathaway. You know, they've been working on this for over a year. So if you reach out to the unions, just ask the welfare fund that's attached to the union. They can send a representative that can speak to the issue.
Okay, so any type of union?
CSA is good.
CSA. Okay,
That's the principal's union. It's Hathaway. His name is Hathaway.
all right. Thank you, Claude.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. LV, yeah, maybe discuss it with Sandra, and if
Yeah.
ultimately you still want to go the speaker route, then we can explore that option with that, taking as a lead the suggestion that Claude just made, or if she just wants to do a informational presentation, that she can do it herself.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich, I saw your hand up at one point. Was your question answered?
No, Jesus said what I was going to say.
Ah, perfect. Okay. So seeing no further questions for LV, we'll move on to housing and homelessness. So Rich, you have the floor again.
Thank you. So we didn't meet in or are not meeting in December. It would have been next week. We are meeting in January on a rescheduled date because of the holiday conflict. And it's going to be mostly legislation, although we are going to hear about the new safe haven shelter that Breaking Ground is putting in place near Union Square.
We're trying to secure them. They're not
trying to secure them. Okay, I thought they had already committed.
Not yet. We're trying to secure
All right.
everything in red is tentative.
Okay. I would like to actually have Senator Myri's office, since we've been kicking them month by month for 5 months now. And because the legislature's in session, this will come up.
Okay.
Eviction moratorium we'll discuss, but we won't have a presenter because as of now, there's no commitment by who's the senator who carried it last time? Kavanaugh. There's no commitment by his office to push for a renewal again, and I'm not sure if there is momentum behind a renewal. The eviction moratorium expires 4 days after this meeting date, so I don't know what's going to happen, but we do want to bring back the topic because we were talking about it at the last meeting.
Okay.
And then, as part of either the chair's report or older new business, I'm planning to do a walkthrough with the board members of the topics that came up in our brainstorming at the last meeting to see if there are any specific issues that people want to take on as preparation for reporting or surfacing issues in the February meeting.
All right. And if we're not able to get the safe haven folks to appear in January, do you want to just drop it from the agenda?
I mean, when is the shelter opening?
January 1st. Well, technically it's open now, but it's being used as a different kind of shelter. Right.
Okay. I kind of feel like we can't not bring it to committee because people will have feelings about it.
All right. Well, we'll try our best to get them, and we'll leave it on the agenda. And if they don't show up, well, then they won't be there, but it can be discussed.
Okay. Just as a general question, do we have one inside contact at Breaking Ground that you tend to go to?
No, we tend to usually go through DHS, but I can reach out to Corinne. Maybe she might have a contact during her that she cultivated during her time as chair of this committee.
I'm just wondering, because if we do, I don't know who that person is, and I would like to know who it is.
Yeah, which is when we were told by sort of a assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner or whatever
from
at
DHS
to go through DHS. So that's what we've been doing. But
okay.
If it doesn't,
I don't object to that if there's a political reason to do that.
Yeah, we'll start CCing higher up people and maybe get some responses here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to the next committee meeting. Let's go to public safety now.
All right. All right. So for public safety, I think we have the agenda pretty well set. So we're not meeting tomorrow, but in our last meeting, we talked about parole eligibility. There's a couple of bills at the state level. So we will open that up for discussion. We were just light on attendance last time. We had a quorum technically, but the committee wanted more time to study the matter. So we'll revisit that one. I don't expect to spend a lot of time on that. The bigger discussion is really about, as I mentioned last week, just what do we need in this district as far as from the new administration in terms of public safety, equality of life, human rights. Very broad conversation, very open-ended, but I'm doing that intentionally to really, see where the community and committee think we need to go with this. So as far as speakers go, I know SEMA's been working with Brendan on possibly inviting somebody from the Adams transition team. Would actually, obviously the new administration will be in office for, I guess, 20 days or so at this point. So we're not sure if that person is would be willing to attend, or if it would be appropriate to have them attend, even if it's just to listen to our conversation. As far as additional speakers and requests for partnerships, I would like to invite the business improvement districts for this conversation. I think they've done a lot of research and have put together some plans as far as what they would like to see. So they might be a good group to have. Are there any others from the executive committee? Any other suggestions as far as speakers go? Kind of want to narrow the scope, really to kind of look at maybe the top 3 to 5 things that are most important for this district. I know there's probably hundreds of things that could be discussed, but we want to narrow the conversation to what are from this district's perspective, where does the new administration need to focus? So open to any ideas as far as other speakers go.
I mean, if we're talking about a discussion, if you want to have, like multiple perspectives, you might want to invite some tenants associations or maybe some community associations, but I know that can get out of hand very quickly and jump into a lot of different topics. So if we're doing more informational,
I thought about that, and I'm not opposed. I mean, I would certainly push the communications out to them through the newsletters, and I don't know if anybody in the office wants to kind of let them know we'll be discussing it. I don't want to invite them as speakers, but I would love their participation. I mean, I'd rather keep it a little bit more professional.
Because my concern is like then it would become a sort of like venting place for all of the issues that are going wrong in the neighborhood, and this is what needs to be fixed, rather than having like a substantive intellectual conversation about policy.
Right. And that's why I wanted to start with the business improvement districts, because I know they've done some research on policy, and they're pretty well rounded as far as the community needs. They obviously have a lot of ties with the businesses from that perspective, but there might be some other residential concerns too. But I think they have a pretty good perspective. But if any of these neighborhood and tenant groups want to attend, I'd certainly highlight that as an item of interest that might, they might want to attend. Other than that.
Claude, you have a suggestion?
He's talked about reaching out to possibly the bids. You might reach out to Fred Carrillo at Grand Central and ask him if he has somebody on staff that might be able to coordinate with you about these topics. And the other one is a question to Jesus. Do you remember what Yanis Martin does? He used to be on the community board.
That name does not ring a bell. That may be before
You
my
know-
time.
Yanis was on the health committee for a while. But he's on the transition team now with the mayor.
Yeah, I think that was before my time.
Okay, well, he might be someone of interest also. That
Yeah, we have a contact on the transition team that SEMA provided. Brendan has reached out to that person. We're still awaiting a response.
okay,
It does sound like even if this person cannot attend or will not attend, this agenda item is going forward to be discussed,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's just a question of, you know, if anybody, it would be great if somebody from the transition team was there. It's not critical. But I think Claude's suggestion is definitely a good one. Getting the Grand Central Partnership involved. That was definitely one of the bids.
We can reach
I
out to the bids. We can, what we can do is we can sort of mention, we can advertise this in the newsletter and
Mhm.
and like we did for LB's meeting where they were discussing the single payer health system in New York, and see if maybe anyone is enticed to attend. And then as far as we can send a personal outreach to the bids and ask them to attend, to participate, or to like just to participate, not to make formal presentations, right?
Depends. I mean, I think, I don't know that we need a formal presentation, but I
Okay.
would say, you know, some brief remarks. You know, certainly, because I know they've done some research on this, and I know they've published some reports and things like that on, you know, where the city should go. And I think I think a group of them have even written some op-eds in the newspaper over the past several months about, you know, some directional things that they would recommend. So if they have a presentation, I wouldn't want to throw that on them, but if they, you know, I'm pretty sure they've presented or have spoken about these types of things before. If they have something already prepared, I would certainly love to hear it. But I certainly wouldn't want to, you know, task them with presenting.
Okay. We'll invite them to make some remarks on the topic if they want.
Sure, that works. So yeah, if there's no other suggestions for speakers, that's pretty much all I have.
Yeah. And I think we have enough time too until the next meeting that if something pops up, please reach out to Matt with your suggestions and input, especially if it's a guest that you think should be involved in that conversation. All right. So we'll move on to the next committee, Land Use and Waterfront. Sandy. I think you might be on mute, Sandy.
Yeah, I'm.
There you go.
I'm trying to start my video. I'm using.
Oh, no worries.
Not my computer. So, well, at least you can hear me. My permission. So, I reached out to the. First off, a recap. We had the final presentation from the heliport. As you heard, people are still very upset about the heliport. Unfortunately, the PDC was not doing anything that was allowed us to delve into some of the other issues that we had. But it's probably more an EDC issue. So I'm not sure, speaking with Atlantic Aviation, is going to help us with any of those issues. We, of course, heard an update from the ESCR, and actually we had a tour of the site after the meeting, so we'll be able to report about it at the next meeting as well. And they are moving along. The wall is complete in several areas, so you can start to get a sense of what it's going to be like between the other side of the FDR and the wall. It's very tight. I also went to the tag for the ESCR, and a lot of discussion about the lower portion. I believe it's called Focus Area 1. And we found out that Chris Collins is retiring, the head of Solar 1. And he gave us some advice that if there are that we really need to pinpoint the issues that we have with the ESDR and identify very specific things and try to not just have kind of a broad dislike of the whole project. So good advice. Upcoming agenda where I've reached out to the Public Advocate's Office and I will speak with them again and confirm that they are able to attend. They tentatively said they would. And this is the racial impact studies, which is part of a new zoning initiative that we have. And then the next one is on the electric recharging electric vehicles. That's something that the committee has been working on previously. And that's Assemblymember Epstein's office. And then update on the work of the community planning fellow. That's going to be a standard agenda item, I think, for a while he's doing his research. And we really are looking for feedback from the rest of the whole board. Request for partnerships. We don't have anything currently, and I think our committee vision hasn't really changed. We're looking at new zoning initiatives and how they affect our community. I think as the year goes along, we'll reach out to George Jones again for some information on affordable housing. So that will come up probably a little bit later in the year. And that's it. We won't be having a December meeting.
Nope. All right. Thank you so much, Sandy. Are there any questions for Sandy? Jesus, do you have any questions?
Just to double check, because the sound was a little bit low, you will reach out again to the Public Advocate's Office because I saw your initial outreach to them, but I didn't ever see a response from them. So you're going to reach out to them again, and assuming that if we do not get a speaker from them, then this item will be pushed back, I guess.
It will have to be because the city planning doesn't know anything about this issue. It's still in its very early stages.
Okay, we'll leave it there for now, and if we need to push it back, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So seeing no further questions, we can move on to the next agenda. I believe it's youth and education. John, you have the floor.
Thank you. As you all might imagine, in the education world in New York, this is a very tumultuous time with the new chancellor taking over. I attended a 6-hour meeting of the Community Education Council last night, which put our old boss of meetings to shame, Kyle, and didn't end until 12:35. So there are many issues on many people's minds, but I'm trying to keep us focused on very practical things that affect our own kids. So the first item on and at our last meeting, we had a very productive interchange with housing and homelessness. Rich attended the meeting, and we clearly agree that there are areas that we can work together on in the future, especially related to students in temporary housing. And I think that's a good collaboration. At our next meeting, we'll start with a simply because we actually had people attend our last meeting related to who wanted to talk about food in schools. Now, I think they wanted to talk about it from a variety of different perspectives, but we should reach out, and I do have the question I identified here. I do think it might be best, Jesus, if the board office reach out to the DOE to find someone to come speak about food policy, and then I will narrow that down in terms of a request. And this is simply because so many people attended to talk about food policy and I invited them to come to our next meeting. I really feel that we can't not talk about it, though it is an issue that has citywide implications, not just for the individual schools in our area. But I think we should respond to people who took an interest to come and see what we can do. The issue that we really think we can make some progress on is that are unique to specific schools in our district are busing. The buses. Some of them don't have heat, some of them don't have air conditioning in the winter, and some of them don't show up. So we are, once again, I will talk with the office about whether we can reach out. I can reach out to people that I might know to come and talk about this, or whether it would be more practical for the borough office to reach out on that. So that we will determine. And Neil Barclay, who's extraordinary as our vice chair, has been very pushing on this issue, and I really appreciate that. We will have a resolution if the governor has already not signed, the bill that was unanimously passed by both, as I mentioned at the general meeting, both houses of the state legislature, Assembly and Senate, to bring the funding for private non-residential schools up to the same level as public schools when it comes to kids with special needs. Just a quick primer on that, if some kids, the district, the Department of Education does a great job taking care of most of the kids who have special needs. But there are some kids whose needs are so significant that we send them to and pay them, the school, the district pays, the city pays for them to go to other private schools. And unfortunately, the process to get your kid into that, if you've ever talked to anyone who's been through it, requires suing the city to make the city pay for it. And so it's a very touchy issue for people. So we will have a resolution on that if the governor hasn't signed it, because we believe it's important. And there's plenty to talk about in old and new business, so I'll just do that at the time. And as I said, in terms of partnerships, we're already starting to find ways to work with Rich and his committee. If we want to move ahead on food or busing, we're going to have to form a partnership with the Community Education Council, because they have the reach into the DOE. That won't be difficult on a personal level, because I know all those people. It might be difficult on a practical level because of all the issues they're dealing with at this time. The committee vision remains to avoid, getting bogged down in the issues that we have numerous councils across the city responsible for dealing with, and just try to find issues that really impact schools in our district. And I'm pretty sure the busing is one, food. I hope we can figure a way to do that for food. So that's my report.
All right, thank you so much, John. Are there any questions for John? I see a hand from Matt. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kyle. I don't know if this is the place to raise it or maybe a new business, but it does dovetail with what John was saying about buses. But I think it might get lost on a lot of people that the children in our city represent a significant portion of our population. And while we look out for public transit riders during rush hour in the morning and at night, we don't look out for our children, as far as I know, with respect to their rush hour at the end of their school day. And the buses are very crowded. They're too crowded during COVID to be safe for anybody. And one way that we can directly impact the children that live in our neighborhood is by increasing bus service at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, that's something I really would. In fact, I would have number 2 as number 1, but we did have people show up to talk about number 1 at the last meeting, so I wanted to respect that. But this is an issue that we definitely, between now and the end of the year, want to have a say on, especially given COVID. Absolutely, Matt, I totally agree with you. This is something that's very important. And the safety at drop off and pickup. and as we saw with 116 a couple of weeks ago, just getting a crossing guard to protect kids crossing the street. I mean, and then Ben Kalos, Council Member Kalos, has a bill that would require that when when a school bus puts its stop sign out, cars are supposed to stop. Well, they don't. And speaking as someone who's actually thrown himself in front of a car somewhat foolishly to try to stop it while it was trying to pass a school bus outside BS 59 a few years ago, Ben has a bill up to put a camera on that stop sign that catches cars who would go through. And we really will probably I hope we end up with a resolution to support that. But it's a critical issue both for the well-being of the kids and safety. I'll stop there.
I have some questions about some clarification questions. Okay, so just so I'm clear, for agenda item number 1, we will find a speaker on food policy.
Yes, and I will be able to make a specific suggestion on that because every year at the CEC, there is a speaker who comes and talks about school food. So I will be able to help you with that.
Great. And we're going to ask them to speak on, you said food policy, but is that different from the nutritional content?
Well, you see, that's what I'd like to ask them to add to their presentation is something that Claude has been pushing for a long time. And in addition to, how many meals they deliver, and when you hear this presentation, as I've said before, it breaks your heart how many kids, their only meal they get a day comes from, what they get at school. But we would like to talk about the nutritional content of that, in terms of carbohydrates, fat, protein, what are we feeding? I mean, we're no longer back in the days of, ketchup as a vegetable, but, for those of you old enough to remember that reference, but, it's not clear that we want to understand what the nutritional content of the food is. So we will be asking them to talk about that.
All right, so food policy and nutritional content.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then for number 2, you said we're going to offline hash out who the best people are to invite for that, right?
Yes. I just have to ask, people on the CEC who the best people are to talk to on that. If you guys, at the community board level, if the board office has, some insight into that through past things you've done, I would really appreciate it. That would be helpful.
No, I'm afraid we don't.
Okay, that's on me.
Okay, and number 3, assuming this does not get signed into law before your next meeting, then this will be on the agenda. If it does get signed into law, then it's off the agenda.
Well, we'll probably just have a statement from the committee thanking the governor for signing it, but we won't have to have a resolution insisting that she sign it.
Okay, and just so that when we post it, it's sort of like as clear as it can be to people who are not followers of this kind of topic. Private residential or non-residential schools, is that just another way of saying private schools?
Well, there some of them are residential and some of them are non-residential. Let me talk to Neil, who is very familiar with this because he has a kid in one of them, to get the precise wording of this. This is how he worded it.
This is the wording that's in the legislation, but I was trying to sort of find something more plain English, like
let me talk
schools and private schools. But if that's not possible, then we'll just leave the language as it is.
You're safe with this language, but we probably could make it more user-friendly. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's if you can, great, but that's not the biggest priority. We'll leave this language as it is because that's what's in the legislation. All right. That's all those are all my questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to the next committee, but we will waive that because the chair nor the vice chair are there. But Brendan, I believe Claire did email you with some of the answers to the questions that you had asked her, or Brendan. I don't know if Brendan's on, but I believe she responded to Brendan's email.
It was Claire's email, but yes, I think she responded.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll now move on to older new business. So if any committee member has any older new business, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none and no further business, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:04 p.m. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a very happy, safe, and relaxing holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you,
Happy
Kyle.
holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays
Stay
to
healthy.
everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Happy holidays. Good night.
Happy holidays.